So the next best thing was just to get a pistol and end it. And I sat at my house for 3 days straight, no sleep, didn't eat, didn't drink anything, with a pistol on my coffee table, just rocking back and forth. Picked that pistol up many times. It was just, again, like I didn't know how to handle it.
Welcome to the Winners Find a Way show. I am your host, Trent Clark, and this is episode 14, Servant Leadership with Kevin Santiago, part one of a two-part series. This is a fabulous episode of Kevin telling his life story, how he, after he found himself in college and a pro ball player, moving on to life and having unexpected challenges in that with personal and business, and then finding the way, the truth, and the life through Jesus Christ. In this episode, Kevin will share his life-changing experiences, from feeling suicidal to making very poor choices and then landing in prison and discussing his redemption. Join us for Kevin as he talks about how he sees clarity, his way of thinking has changed after his suicidal thoughts, and you will learn so much from Kevin as he quotes, "Be a coach and a team player." Join us. Hi, this is Trent Clark, CEO of Leadershipity, serial entrepreneur, international speaker, longtime coach in professional baseball, coaching in 3 world championships. And today I welcome my guest on the Winners Find a Way show, Kevin Santiago.
What's up, man?
How are you, buddy?
Good.
Man, you look good.
I know. I remember Spees had his 2 World Series rings on. You got yours. I forgot mine.
Yeah, well, I don't wear them all, right? But it would have been nice to see that Slammers ring, right? Like, come on, man. Like, it's the ring show.
Right. There's not as many diamonds, but it's still pretty.
It's pretty. It's pretty, man. Hey, listen, you know what I love about those rings? It's always earned, never given, right? Yep. So excited about Kevin joining us today for the Winners Find a Way show. Here's the show. Have you ever faced stiff adversity, felt like losses are mounting and you need to find a better way? Well, I think you came to the right place, whether you're already an entrepreneur, a leader, a coach, an athlete. You're just looking to start your journey today to being elite. I think this is the perfect show and podcast for you. And I bring people on who have been through some journeys, and Kevin is no different. Kevin, tell them real quick, Kevin Santiago, tell them where they can find you. Winners Find a Way show is brought to you by Data-Driven Operations, powered by Journeys. Journeys is a software solution that helps you create a winning formula for your organization. DD Ops, powered by Journey, helps you act as one, see as one, work as one, play as one, win as one. Are you looking for visibility, coachability, and productivity amongst your team? DD Ops is your software. Click on the link in the show notes to learn more.
KP Santiago 10, the number 10 on Instagram and Twitter.
All right, nice. And you're on LinkedIn as well?
I am.
Okay, very good.
Not as active though.
Okay, very good. All right, let me give you a few highlights of my guest, Kevin Santiago. Youngest of 3. I knew Kevin's older brother much before I knew him. And youngest of 3 in a baseball sports family in Chicago, Illinois. Your nickname is Pebs, which we're going to get into. After baseball, which you're a good ball player, after baseball, hit the railroad and you become a supervisor, union VP. You are doing life as the American success, right? Like, financials look good. You got the house, you got the dog, you got the car, you got the fiance. I mean, everything society says is success, you have a hold of and had it. Is that right?
That's correct.
And then things changed. A tragic accident, very critical. There's probably things that led up to that, probably before that. Some key people come back into your life, a prison sentence, which we want to talk about. And now it's finding a way, a new definition of success, a new journey, a ring with the Joliet Slammers, winning I think it's the Frontier League, correct?
Correct.
And winning a championship there, to St. Xavier, winning conference titles. I'm sporting my St. Xavier, the oldest Catholic institution in Chicago. I'm sporting my St. Xavier today for all you St. Xavier Cougs. Shout out. Right. And then of course you're a Windy City Thunderbolt today as a coach, and you've been a long time player and coach. So we're gonna definitely develop into that. So Kevin, before I go all into you, right? Let's talk a little bit about why do you come on the show? Why do you tell your story? Tell me a little bit about why Kevin Santiago wants to do that.
I just see where society's at right now. And, I think society's starving for authenticity and genuineness and things like that. When I share my story, I get a lot of feedback saying, like, man, I just see your heart and your passion for wanting to help and, turn things around for other people, help them in any way, things like that. Like, everybody's always going through something, like good or bad. I mean, but I'm one of those guys that loves to pull up next to somebody when they're struggling and just kind of whatever you need, let's do it. Whether it be on the baseball field now or off the field. I've helped out with, Spees and his journey a little bit. You and I've gone out there quite a bit. I've helped out with high school kids that are addicted to heroin and things like that. And sometimes it's not even, giving them answers. It's just being there to listen to them and, like kind of put yourself in their shoes and just say, hey, this is what I would do, man. Like, let's try doing something like this, or maybe go about it this way or something like that, so it's not, sometimes it's just listen to them, and just being there and they see that, and sometimes that's all I need.
I love that. I mean, I really, we kind of talk about that definition of servant leadership, and a lot of different definitions will go into that for sure. I mean, did you know this? Like, was there a time as a kid, like that kind of that impactful pivot point where you said, hey, I'm going on this journey of sports and I'm going to be serving others eventually? I mean, was that clarity as a kid, or was there other clarifiers for you as a kid to point you in a direction?
So the servant leadership or any of that never really came to me clearly. I mean, probably when you and I first met, and I was like searching to be like a character coach or something along those lines, that's when the clarity really, growing up, it was more or less just like, this is what I'm going to be. I'm going to be a professional athlete in baseball. And I was always told, especially by my mom, like, it's just a game, and like, I see scouts out here now that have scouted me, that are scouting our guys now. And that's one thing they've always said is like, Kev, I remember when we were scouting you, like you were always that guy that had the smile on his face. Like, you were just out there having a good time. No matter what the score was, like, you were always lifting your teammates up. I look back now and I try to be that for these guys. Like, yeah, I am a coach, but I try to kind of be a coach and a team player, so to speak. And it's a tight line to walk sometimes because guys get a little too comfortable and overstep that bound. But, and it's understanding that, I put that out there for them, and I just kind of pull up next to them and say, hey, we can't be doing that or something. But yeah, I mean, the clarity on the servant leadership really came about just recently within the past, 8 years or so.
Your position as a player was a catcher, correct?
No, I was middle infield.
Okay, middle infield. Okay, all right. So I was thinking, as a catcher, I always feel like leader on the field, right? Like, absolutely, so that's why I was thinking, okay. So let's move to why we're on you as a kid. Let's talk a little bit of how you got the nickname Pebs, because, that's not, it's unique to you, right? Like, Pebs, everyone wants to know what that means, right?
Right. Yeah. So, and it's funny because the guy, Phil, he was a teammate of mine, like sophomore year, summer ball. He's the one that came up with the nickname, and his brother, like we've always hung out. He's got an older brother. Probably 6 years ago, somebody called me Kevin when we were all hanging out, and he's like, who is Kevin? So this whole time, like 20 something years, everybody's been calling me Pep, and he had no idea what my real name was. Like,
yes,
that's like, when I hear Pebs, like, those are my guys. Like, those guys really know who I am.
So hold on, before you keep going, I want to tell people on the show who don't know this, by the way, because this is very important in athletics. We give nicknames and they are assigned as like biblical, right? Like this is not uncommon. There are many a times where I have to go to a roster going, wow, that kid's name's Ryan? Like I have no idea, because a nickname has been associated with someone, and it's often last name, right? Like, not uncommon for me to be Clarky, TC, all those things that are somewhat related to the name. Right. But there are names that go out there and it's like, I have no idea what his real name is, right? So it makes me laugh, but it's not uncommon that someone you've known for probably nearly 20 years says, your first name's Kevin? Yeah, like I don't see that, right? Like you get the, you don't even look like a Kevin to me. Right. You look like a Jimmy, right? Jimmy, only Jimmy. So keep going then. And I just had to tell the audience a little bit about, like, how that works, right?
You're absolutely right. And no, so the nickname's Pebbles, and that comes from my older brother. His name is Rock. His nickname is Rock. He got that when he was younger, about 12 years old, went to the Little League World Series. He was just a bigger kid, so they called him Rock. That song Solid as a Rock came out. Forget who sings it, but that was the anthem back then, I guess, for my brother. The guys were just trying to come up with a nickname for me, and they're like, and my brother, he's 6'4" or 6'2", like 280 pounds. I'm 5'10", 190 pounds at the time. And they're like, you act just like your brother, So he's like, we're just going to call you Pebbles.
You're like a little rock.
Right, a little rock. So
I love it.
Yeah, so I kind of, like you said, like it was stamped on me. I kind of had to accept it because that was the nickname assigned to me. So.
Well, this makes me laugh because, in line with this, right? The reason I met your brother earlier is because our sons, his son and my son, played hockey together when they were like 7 and 6 years old. Now they're, high school age kids playing this high level hockey. Both of them are on to bigger, better things, right? His son's a really, really good player. And so I don't know Rock's real name. I've known him for 10 years because they're 17 now, right? So like, I don't know his first name.
Right. It's Richard.
Yeah, right. Like, right. I would have never, like Dick Santiago actually makes sense now for me. But, I would have never thought Rock. Like, I love Rock. He's great. So that is so awesome. That's so funny. You learn something new every day. I now know Richard Santiago. And by the way, I used to office in a building where he works, right? So I would see him all the time. And heaven forbid, like someone say, hey, go find Richard Santiago. I would be like, who the heck are you talking about, bro? Like, I have no idea who that is, right? So that's hilarious. Okay, so let's keep moving with your story, right? We kind of talked about your introduction. You go through baseball, you go through college, and you didn't finish your degree and go into independent ball. You're not drafted. You kind of making your way through sports, but you're also thinking like, hey, I got to start life, right? I gotta. Maybe it's not working for me. And you start railroad, you start, growing, applying some of the things you learned in baseball is this hard work ethic guy who's a smile, joy, bring it to other people. And they go, wow, you're pretty good. Supervisor, pretty good. Union vice president. And now you've got all the world successes, right? You've got the fiance, the dog, man, like you're on your way to the 2.2 kids. You're right on the way, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then there's some things that change. Right? In a very short time, work changes. There's some conflict at work. There's some conflict in the personal relationship that's pretty deep and dark and ultimately costing you the relationship. I don't know how much you want to go into that, but like, let's just say costing you the relationship. And at this point, probably some level of depression sets in. And so you are not at your best, not where you've been in the past. A turn to alcohol is always a nice little, solvent for anytime you're down, right? And that's a common place in our society for sure. And a tragic accident happens. Why don't you take us through exactly where you were, kind of the moments before and how this unfolds?
Yeah. So, like you said, like society says, have the house, the dog, the good looking girl, the jacked up Jeep. Jeep Wrangler with the top off door, or
the
top
lift
down
kit.
doors off.
I got a lift kit, man.
Right. Yeah. Listen to Kenny Chesney, like going to the beach, like living it up, So, the fiance and I, we end up splitting for whatever reason. It was heartbreaking. I fought to try to make that work. And, I felt like her end, like it wasn't really there. So, being an athlete, like you're supposed to be mentally tough, right? Just grind through it, so anxiety and depression, those things were for the mentally weak, right? Like they couldn't hold their composure. They couldn't succeed through hard times, stuff like that. So when all that started going through, or, the breakup and stuff, like all that started coming to life. Like I couldn't control it, and I've never experienced it before. I may have, but I didn't know about it. I go out with a couple buddies, like they're like, just come out. And, I knew better because we, growing up, we've always played like backyard football and stuff. And I've always sprained an ankle. Right. And they're like, come on, let's just play pickleball. And I'm like, all right. So we play pickleball, end up tearing my Achilles tendon. So now I'm out, have surgery, laid up on the couch, thinking about everything with the ex, so anxiety and
Off
depression.
work, no work.
Yeah, out of work.
Yeah.
So the anxiety and depression is like really setting in bad, so I had leave from work up until a certain point, and for whatever reason, the paperwork got mixed up. They deemed me AWOL, put me up for investigation, end up losing my job.
So the world success story is now all fractured.
Fractured, yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. I get with a couple buddies and they're like, hey, and this is right when I started healing from the surgery, started walking, being able to drive, because I had the Jeep with the stick, right? You got to have a Jeep with a stick if you're a guy, right? So, so I go out, we go out, watch the SEC championship, and then we're doing a
football season.
Yeah. So we're doing a thing for, Santa's helpers, we buy gifts for, kids that are in need. So everybody goes, like the girl puts on an event. We go there, we drop the stuff off, things like that, so driving home that night, getting in an accident, over the legal limit of alcohol, and lady ended up losing her life that night, so now here I am, like, not only anxiety, depression, PTSD now, not being able to sleep, like reliving that night over and over and over for even today sometimes. It's just, it was hard. I mean, it was hard. Like nobody wants to go through that or anything, so yeah. So now I'm looking this stuff up, right? Like I go into county for a month, I get bailed out. I get back home and like, I know how I have to recover, right? Like, I just want to be left alone. Like, hard day at work, like just leave me alone, give me an hour or so. And like, I knew this was going to be a toll, so I was just, my parents are like, just come back home. I'm like, no, I need time. Like, I just need to be all right and figure this out, so now I'm reading, 7 to 14 years, again, I've never been in trouble, anything, speeding tickets and stuff, but, it's just one of those things. Like I started reading stuff online just to see what was up, and the cool, like don't get me wrong, like this whole thing, like it beats me up every day, but like the cool thing was to see how much support I had, just online, and it sucks, but it got to take the positive as much as you can out of that,
Yeah.
So, a month after being home, like now that American dream's actually broken.
Yeah.
Right? It's not fractured anymore. It's just broken. Like, I'm going to have this background. I'm going to have this title as a felon, all this negative stuff. Right. So like, if all that was gone, then what's this whole life about? Right. Like I had it all. I'm probably not going to get it again, so like, now what?
I mean, when you go on your own, are you suicidal here? Are you okay? Are you, where are you at with the unknown? And obviously I mean, there's guilt, there's shame, there's all sorts of things going on, right? So where are you at right now, from a mental health standpoint?
Yeah. So obviously the PTSD, the anxiety, the depression, never dealt with it before, right? Had no
tools.
outlet,
no tools.
Right. Yeah. No tools in the toolbox, other than alcohol, which is
which is not a tool, bro. That's an enabler, right? Like,
right.
Which is already turned bad. Like, even right.
So I'm like, all right, so now, like, what do we do now? So the next best thing was just to get a pistol and end it. And I sat at my house for 3 days straight, no sleep, didn't eat, didn't drink anything, with a pistol on my coffee table, just rocking back and forth. Picked that pistol up many times. It was just, again, like I didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
So yeah, very much suicidal. And again, I didn't even know how to do that, like, right. Like
again, not a tool that we have in the toolbox, right? Yes.
I'm like, there's got to be a different way. And when I first went into county, it was, I was actually reading the Bible. It was so different. Like guys would be up and I would sleep, and then I would be asleep when they would be up and stuff. So I just tried to stay on a different level because for whatever reason, I thought I was better than them. I don't belong in here, all this stuff, and I have a good grasp on how God works now, but early on, I was just like, I had no idea why I was reading the Bible or how it even came about, right? So,
Did you have that as a kid? I mean, was there some foundational level where you see, I was a CE goer as a kid, like Christmas and Easter, right? So did you have a foundation there at all, or?
I did. It kind of came like how you were, like Christmas and Easter, like towards the back end of it. But like growing up, like church every Sunday, things like that. But I never really had a relationship with God or Jesus Christ. Like I knew all about it, but I didn't know that was an outlet.
You had some knowledge. Okay, good.
Right. Yeah. So I remember one of my buddies being involved with the church, and I reached out to him, Bobby, and we had gone to high school together, played football together, things like that, and did some side jobs together. But after that, we just kind of split, and didn't really hear anything from each other. But that's how we guys and our group is. Like it's like whatever, we pick up right where we left off. So I actually called him that night, reached out to him, hey, can you talk? And he's like, I've been waiting for this call. I'm like, what? So we get on the phone, and he asked me some difficult questions, and about God, like, do you take Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? And I'm like, I don't know, I guess. Like, I've heard that. We talked for 3 hours that night.
Yeah.
And he's like, I will be over on Monday morning, and we're just going to sit and talk. And we did that for a year and a half, and it turned into a Bible study. And life started making more sense to me. And what society says, the house, the girl, the Jeep, the big old English Mastiff, like none of that stuff even mattered anymore. It really is slap in the face of like where I was at and how far I was gone, and what I was using as an outlet for all the pain that I was going through.
Yeah.
So we met for a year and a half. I got sentenced to 3.5 years. I did 16 months in prison. And just from that point on, I mean, there was a guy, Paul, that kind of jumped on board, like, Paul, and he's like and he said it early on, like, you're going to go in. There's no doubt about it, right? Like, you're going to do time. And he's like, we need to armor you up, right? Like, you need to go in there. You're going to go to a dark place, and you need to be the light in there. And that was my mission for that whole year and a half of prep before I even went in. Went to my sentence at my court, get my sentence, and they gave me a month to get my stuff together. And then I went in and took my time and pleaded out. Paul said it was the coolest thing that he saw was me walking behind, like they're taking me into custody, handcuffed with my Bible in my hands. He's like, that was your foundation. So, I go in and you just start spreading the word, man. Like, like it is a dark place, bro. Like,
right. It's hard. I can't imagine, I mean, I cannot imagine. I think it's a lot of people's worst nightmare.
Right.
All of it, by the way, like no one wants to accidentally hurt anyone, right? Like, let alone a death, right? And no one wants to go to prison. And I recall in that, I mean, you actually had a chance to plea out of this and time and do an extended probationary period and this and that, based on character, things that about you, but you chose this repentance as part of what you thought you had to do. Is that right?
Yeah. So early on, obviously the year and a half I knew right from wrong, right? I thought I did before, but now I really knew it. So I remember my attorney coming out and saying, hey, we're going to need character references, things like that. And I'm like, okay, well, like, what are those? How many is a lot? And he should be good with about 20, right? And this is what you need to have included in there. I showed up the next court date with 122 character references. It was awesome to see.
Well, and I think that's what you're talking about, that support, right? When you talk about the good that comes out of it, the people that are coming willing to go, put their name on it for you, right? Like to put their name on the line and say, I will sign up for this guy. And I mean, as a young person, adult, anytime, I think any time in your lifetime that someone will put their name on the line for you, I mean, it's a big deal, right? We don't take that lightly. But I want to come back to something you said that was very important. To me, at least. And I want to dig a little deeper on this. Like before, I thought I knew right and wrong. But after the year and a half of training myself up, prepping my armor for what was about to happen and kind of what's next, that line had clarity is what I heard. I'm paraphrasing, but you had clarity now. I think a lot of us have a blurred line of right and wrong, right? Like right and wrong. Well, it's gray. I mean, I'm just going to lie a little bit on the expense report, right? Like you're like, oh, well, so it's gray, and we draw a line in the sand, which we can easily cover and move the line pretty quickly on where that is for us, right?
So, and the popular phrase is like, it's easier to ask for forgiveness, right? Like
that's right. Don't ask for permission, beg for forgiveness.
Yeah, I mean, everything just became more clear, like just getting in the Word and understanding God's design, where society's at with certain topics. I remember, like, I was a union guy, right? Like, so every sentence started with an F-bomb or.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, the work on the railroad was not the church choir, in fact, it turns out, right? Yeah, I worked for a long time, right? And I get that. Right. Like that's a very but could someone find that clarity like you found that path without, do you think they could do that without, a quote unquote biblical foundation? I mean, can they do that way? Can they get there?
Absolutely. The problem I see with that is it just doesn't last, and it's always on to the next. Like this is a foundation that does not move. Obviously, having good support, having good ideas, being able to bounce things off of people, like that's all great. Like I fully support that. But sometimes you get bad intel, and now what?
Yeah. I think that's why it's important in Al-Anon, like AA, that there's a 12 step, and one of those steps is a spiritual higher power component. There's something more than just me. And I haven't been through AA, but I'm familiar with the learnings, right? And so I think there is that component that says, I think part of it's gratitude. I think part of it's perspective, because we're not very good when we're self-focused, right? We tend to be, prideful. Things don't usually go well for us when we're just self-focused. And we see that in teams, right? We talk about I, me players all the time, and it's it doesn't tend to work well. But let's talk a little bit. Let me ask you a question going through this. I mean, knowing what you know now,
I'm going to stop you because
let's finish
with the character letters and things.
Please, let's go back. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think towards the end of it, before they were going to give me my sentence, the attorney came out and he's like, they're going to give you probation, and I was like, wow, like that's great. And I just looked at my dad and I was just like, I can't, and like union me, I'm like, hell yeah, like let's do this,
Yeah. Union me, right? Yeah.
Like, let's go. No, but like it's having that different perspective, and like, it just changed my heart, changed my mind, and I put myself in, if this happened to my mom or my sister or whatever it may have been, like I would have been like, yeah, he's a good dude, like great guy, like successful, how society says it. But I wouldn't be okay with probation, right?
Yeah.
I would say he doesn't deserve 7 to 14 years, but he has to do some time, right? So I told my attorneys, no, I'm not going to do probation. And he's like, what?
Yeah, right. He's like, this is one I've never heard before, actually.
Right. And I was just like, it's not the right thing to do.
Thank you for joining us for another Winners Find a Way show. I am your host, Trent Clark. If you love this episode, share this episode with your friends and follow us on whatever podcasting medium you're listening to. If you want more content from us, join us at leadershipity.com or the Leadershipity YouTube channel. You can find us on all the social media networks at either Trent M. Clark or Leadershipity. For our award-winning workshop, Win with Great Teams, you can find that page on LinkedIn, as well as our corporate page, Leadershipity. If you want to win more, it starts with you today. Say it with me now. I have what it takes.